There she is, my tank. My original plan was to basically use it exactly as you see there. I was going to lay it flat. I am going to cut the rack off the other tank with the compressor and motor attached to it, and just set it on top of this thing. I wasn't going to weld the two. I was going to wrap a ratchet strap around them and cinch them together. One of those, I'll only do this for a while kind of things that 20 years later you're still dinking with. I was also going to drill a hole and tap it somewhere in the really thick bell end down here, because I had to have a way to drain the tank. I just have to. And then I was tinkering and looking at it, and I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all. One, my tank is unfortunately about 12 inches too long for my little spot, which doesn't seem like much, but it would require moving heaven and earth to shove enough toolboxes and file cabinets full of old 10-penny nails I'll never use down enough to get room for those extra 12 inches. And the reason I was going to do it sideways is simply convenience. But what I'd truly like is an upright, less floor space and all that. But I couldn't figure out how to do it. And I didn't want to drill a hole and tap the bottom of this end, because it just doesn't feel as thick as that end. And it finally came to me. And many of you are not going to like it. I am, in fact, going to do an upright. I'm going to marry this thing to some of Lee Iacocca's finest Dodge steel wheels. It turns out that, at least for my application, the inner dish of this particular 8-bolt Dodge 16-inch cradles my tank perfectly. So now we got us a plan. This will then allow my tank to stand straight up. I'm going to take a notch out a section here. I'll come directly sideways out over to here. That'll allow me to weld my pipe to the rim, and then I'll have my nozzle right there. We can then go straight up alongside the edge of the tank, and I can mount my unloader. I can mount the unloader from the other tank on top of that, and the manifold from the other tank on top of that. And I can put a drain valve basically right here at its lowest point. And sure, it's not directly into the tank, but as the air whooshes out, it's going to take all the water with it. How'd I go from making one bomb to two? It's probably not as bad as you think. I started with this tank about 6 months ago. Ran it dry. It was too old. They didn't want to refill it. So I pulled the end of the thing off and I vented it. And the way I vented it was by putting a copper line all the way to the bottom, no sparks, so that I could blow just a gentle waft of compressed air. And I did that for, I don't know, an hour. Normally I would fill them with water. I just didn't want that much water in there. After that, I added solvent, and I swished it and swirled it, and I rolled this thing back and forth in the yard for a long time, and dumped and swished and dumped and swished in an attempt to get that stinky oil out, and just to pull any of the rust particles and whatnot out of this tank. Now, obviously, having vaporized solvent in a enclosed space is nearly as bad as mixing oxygen with propane in an enclosed space. So I did my ventilation trick there again for about another hour or so, and then I set it aside, and it has been essentially open and venting now for, I don't know, 4 months. I'll probably, I have a small air tank with a little bit of residual air pressure in it. I'll probably dump that down inside once again with a hose and just vent and waft, and we'll call it good. That'll work fine. Or I'll leave everything to Shay. Change of plans. This is the new one. So here is the protective cap, right, that screws onto the tank. I cut the top of it off, and I have taken the paint off these components. I'm going to attach these, okay, and I'm going to weld them firmly to the cap, and firmly to the rim. Then I will basically just screw the rim on. That should be, I mean, there's an inch of thread. Granted, it's kind of loose and floppy and crappy. There should be plenty of holding power there. No welding, nothing. The tank is pristine and pure. I like that. I think I'm pretty satisfied with that. So now I need to find out if the concrete's level the tank to the concrete, level the rim, see if I get that perfectly level, and I set the tank on it, and then I level the rim, then this platform will be perfectly level, which means when I flip it upside down, it'll stand level. Fantastic. I think when I weld it, I'm going to back it off just a little whisper. That's tight. Maybe a quarter of a turn, huh? Yeah, quarter of a turn or so. Line the rim up so my spokes hit in between. Tack, weld, and enjoy. Awesome. Well, let's go make some ugly welds.